Now here on Kiwi. Time to talk to the man from publicaddress.net, the hard news blog there, and Media 7 show on TVNZ 7. It is Russell Brown, of course. Good morning, Russell.
Good morning.
And first up, let's talk about these new liquor laws and liquor proposals that are coming in. Took everyone by surprise, actually, yesterday, I thought.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel that is not the idea. It looks like a distraction, frankly.
Take the heat off the Banks affair.
Yeah, government's having a difficult week with John Banks, and look over there, a bird.
Same with the student loan leak thing before the budget as well.
Yes, yeah, they're basically trying to flood the news channel, I think.
Okay, so what do you make of the proposals?
I haven't studied them closely. I think really the more interesting thing is the fact that all the other parties have been blindsided.
Yeah.
Labor actually asked for a meeting quite recently over potential changes. Now suddenly there's a supplementary order paper which brings in all these changes. So it's...
Of course, also in the background, you've got this call to make the lobbying in Parliament more transparent as well.
Yes.
And we know that surely one of those liquor companies has a card-carrying member who's got a swipe card into the corridors of power, right?
Yeah, entirely possible. Lots of people have them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of remarkable as well. But yeah, it's going to take a little while to actually see what all this means. Probably the interesting thing is the split age provision, 18 for on premises and 20 for off.
Which I was just saying to Russell Norman before, it was like that before '99 or 2000, whenever the law changed.
Yeah, it was effectively, yes.
You could go and
there were so many exceptions for licensed premises.
Well, you could have a meal as an 18-year-old and drink.
Yes, and you could go to various. I think there were different laws for clubs and that sort of thing. So, yeah, or if your parents were with you, or that's. It wasn't specifically the law. I mean, I recall as an 18-year-old being. Having to hide from the police when I was going to see bands.
Yeah.
Which is actually why, not so much actually even the eating a meal thing, I would be sad to see the law for on-premises put back to 20, because it was actually quite noticeable when the drinking age was dropped. You suddenly started seeing 18-year-olds at gigs, and that was good.
Yeah.
It was good for the bands, it was good for the atmosphere of the whole place, and in a way it was actually good to have young people there on premises for something other than drinking as much alcohol as they could.
Exactly.
Which is certainly what they were doing outside in the park.
One of the restrictions they're proposing is forcing clubs to close earlier. I don't know if that's general all around New Zealand and what earlier actually means.
That's a mad idea. If you talk to people like Simon Gregg, who ran nightclubs for years, the idea of having a common time an early time in which you throw people out is really a recipe for trouble. I mean, from his point of view, he said the problem was never the people who stayed, who were there at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
They were pretty much there because they wanted to be in the nightclub and they were dancing, and they probably weren't drunk. The worst times for them tended to be around 1 a.m., where the office workers who'd started drinking after work were really much the worse for wear. So, I mean, I guess that's different for certain sorts of bars, but for nightclubs, I don't know whether it makes much sense.
Yeah, and restricting bottle shop hours as well, and I guess taking liquor out of those convenience stores, those small dairies.
That does seem like a good idea.
Yeah,
it almost seemed like an anachronism that they were still able to do that, because they didn't have the feel or the robustness of pretty much anywhere else you can buy alcohol. It almost gets annoying. Certainly at the Greyland Countdown, you go certain days of the week, and everyone, even me, and I'm quite old, had to get approved for purchase of liquor, and you've got one manager running between the tills, tapping in the code. But at least they're doing that.
Yeah,
they're not selling liquor lightly.
It's interesting. This is all happening at the same time that there's a renaissance sort of going on with beer and wine, and the education around what is good beer and wine, and what is mass produced by large corporations and what is produced by small independent producers and that sort of thing. That is all going on in the background. I'm sure that's not mainstream, but it's all happening. This thing is happening at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see how a new generation comes through with perhaps a little bit more education about what they're drinking.
Yeah, and to be honest, it would be nice to see it more mainstream. To one comparison, apart from the team being awful, the experience of going to Eden Park this season has been dreadful. Whatever form of spates they're putting in the plastic bottles is just. I've actually stopped. I actually stopped drinking beer at games.
Yeah. Well,
I just buy a bottle of lemonade because I cannot drink that.
It's once you start drinking that stuff, you taste the chemicals.
Yeah.
You taste the sugar.
Yeah, and yet on the other hand, the controversial KRS-One gig, where they were refused under fairly dubious circumstances an independent liquor license and had to change venues, they had a beer sponsorship from Moa, and I'd never seen it before. Nice Moa craft beer in handy little plastic bottles.
Yeah, nice.
The red and the blue. It was brilliant. It was actually very nice beer. It didn't cost any more than the rest of it, and it seemed incredibly civilised.
Yeah.
So, more of that.
More of that.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Yesterday, a strange spectacle in Parliament with Eric Roy as the Speaker.
Yes. Lockwood Smith was indisposed. He was away playing indoor netball, apparently.
Is that what he was doing?
Apparently, yes.
That was more important than running Parliament after a 3-week recess?
More important than democracy.
Crikey.
But I suspect Eric Roy might not be getting another turn again soon. Easily the worst turn as Speaker that I can recall. He didn't quite seem to know when he should be on his feet. He didn't know standing orders. And it gradually became clear to all the MPs that they could pretty much cheek him.
Well, especially when you got Windsor Peters and Trevor Mallard there, two very seasoned. They know the whole rule book inside out.
Yeah, exactly. And Mallard by the end of it was really pushing it, and as was Peters. And then Grant Robertson had a turn, and even mild-mannered Russell Norman was schooling the Speaker on standing orders. It was always going to be a fairly interesting afternoon in at question time, because I think it was 4 of the questions were about John Banks.
Yeah.
And they were always going to try and work in a few more in the other questions as well. But I don't think anyone expected the random Roy factor.
Yeah.
It was very odd.
But then Labour let themselves down last night, and Trevor Mallard is accepting the blame for a blunder where David Shearer had been trying to embarrass John Key over his refusal to stand down in the wake of the mayoral campaign donation saga, but it was Shearer who was left red-faced when it turned out the quote was by blogger David Farrar.
Yeah, that is embarrassing, isn't it?
So he had to go back in and amend his mistake.
Yeah.
So not so good at the moment for David Shearer, is it?
No, it's not. The one bit of good news he's had was a very good poll in the New Zealand Herald yesterday. They were up by 7 points on the last Digipoll. So that, I think, gives him some breathing space. But he really has to learn to communicate more effectively. And I must say, I heard Grant Robertson, who is said to be eyeing the job, the deputy leader, on the radio this morning, and he's so articulate.
Yeah.
As is the other figure in there, David Cunliffe, who gave a really interesting speech at his Newland electorate office on Sunday.
Yes.
That has been seen, and I think with some justification, as him again laying out his credentials for leadership and appealing to the party base, who are concerned, rightly or wrongly, that Labour is heading too far towards the centre. Although, which is a difficult thing to say because they haven't really said much at all. But I think it's going to be interesting seeing the speeches that come after this. He's billed it as a series of speeches on economic policy and economic development, and this one did look quite left-wing, which has certainly pleased people. But if he's going to reject the neoliberal consensus, he does have to basically say, well, what goes in its place, and it appears that he's going to have a crack at that. So there's something very encouraging about someone actually advancing ideas, rather than simply playing politics.
We'll follow that one with interest. And finally, what's on Media 7 this week?
Media 7 this week, because it's the week of the Documentary Edge Festival, we're looking at what the hell's happening with documentaries in New Zealand, because you don't really see them on television. No. Very rarely. And then you see things that are funded as documentaries, like the GC, which even TV3, I notice, in their program promos are referring to as a reality show. Yeah. It was funded as a documentary, originally under a different name, by NZ On Air. I mean, I don't know whether there's blame here or who's to blame. If there is, maybe it's the network. But it just seems odd that there's a category called documentary and no one really is calling what's emerged documentary. It's
not really what we would classically consider a documentary, but I guess we can be thankful that they haven't funded the Ridges thing or whatever.
No. I accidentally scandalised Twitter last Friday by putting it up as a scenario that the Ridges was funded as documentary. And people took me seriously.
You freaked me out. You freaked me out. Said you went too far there, Russell. Too far.
Oh, I bet my sense of humour is a little too oblique here.
Hey, nice one. Publicaddress.net is where people can head, and Media 7 show just after 9 o'clock news on Thursdays on TVNZ7. Thanks, Russell.
Indeed. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.